Hello and welcome to the first episode of Pod Hunter for the NRL SuperCoach Hub in 2025. My name's Scoop and I'm here to discuss those point of difference players, pods we love to call them. The make or break players who can shoot you up the ranks or leave you all on your lonesome and dump you down with a low score. Now, pods are what gives SuperCoach flavour. They give a score that nobody else or very few other people have, and you ride or die by their scores sometimes. In order to finish on a very, very good rank, it probably means you have picked up a few really good point of difference players that most other people didn't own. Now, when I say good, I don't mean good as in, oh, they were 10 points of value, they were scoring 75, whatever it is. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're good on their own. A pod should only be picked or considered if you genuinely believe they have a shot at outdoing the main option that everybody else has. There's no real point in picking up somebody who's averaging 75 at fullback if everybody else has got Ponga or Teddy and they're averaging 85 or 90. You're just losing out on points there for not a lot of reason, to be honest. So keep that in mind when going for these pods. It applies to money making too. For that reason, I would never consider somebody like an Isaiah Katoa over a Jamie Humphreys at the moment because Humphreys is scoring better and is a lot cheaper, and most people are going him. You don't pick the guy who's not going to be as good as the option that everybody else has. But anyway, thank you if you're joining in. I'm going to try and make this a weekly thing. If you're keen on listening for more pods and more Pod Hunter content, make sure to like and subscribe and let me know who you'd like me to look at next week, especially with the weekend coming up. Anyway, let's get into some of these pods that I'm interested in for round 4, 2025. Okay, so I've taken all the players in the game. Most of us own so many of these top ones. Look at that. I've now got all the top 16, which is a little bit wild. But it really thins out past there, and not many at all. Not many at all actually go down into the weeds too often unless you're really tinkering with your team. Most of the strong options are going to be in those higher ownership ones or the higher change in ownership ones because there's a reason to pick them. That's why everybody's jumping on. Now, the first guy that I will go through today is somebody who I can't unfortunately fit in my team due to its structure, but I'm very excited for him. And that is one Kale Iro. So you might say, Scoot, why do you want to get Iro? There's so many other guys with much lower break evens and that are scoring a fair few points. True, there are, and there's a lot of importance in money making early in the season. But if you're like me and you have like a Greg Marge you want to buy and a Dylan Lucas which is still selling because I don't know you looped Haas last week or something, you're probably pretty short in centre wing this week. So Iro fills that gap quite nicely and probably picks you up a keeper for the entirety of the year. He averaged 65 last year, but it was the way he did it that piques my interest and how he started this year. So one of the greatest cash cow rookie seasons by a centre wing in a little while. But he was just consistent with his huge base, good power, and that was about it for about half the year. He had one try in his first game, and then nothing, absolutely nothing except like an assist round 11. Like there was very little scoring points coming out of Iro and the Sharks on his side. Now that changed about mid-season. Nicho Hynes went down. Trindle came in, started to dominate a lot more than he had previously. And even when Hynes was back, he showed a lot less dominance of all the responsibility of running the team. And what do we notice straight after that? Second try of the year, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. All of a sudden, it's raining tries, and he is scoring 70s, 80s, and 90s now instead of your 50s and 60s. Prior to that, uh, prior to that score, that change, he's averaging high 50s. That's really solid as a cash cow. And then he finished the year in 65. If you look at those 9 games, starting from that second try game, he averaged 79 for the rest of the year, 79 in those 7 games. And he started this year off with 87 in 3 games. Now, I don't think he's going to score 87. And I don't think he's going to score a 65. I think he's going to score an improvement on last year because of this not new role in attack, but just getting ball in better positions with Trindle feeding him better options. Now, he's already made a little bit of money last week. He's priced up to around 70 now, just over. I just do genuinely think that he can push into that 70, 75 bracket this year and become one of those top tier centre wings rather than I think he was 12th highest average last year. I think he can be a guy that is a final team target in all genuineness. So very, very keen on Iro. He's got who is next couple of opponents. He has a weakened Bulldogs, Raiders, Manly, Knights, Tigers, Eels. So it's not the easiest for the next 3 or 4 weeks, but it's not terribly difficult. Manly have looked very sharp. Raiders have looked very sharp, but a weakened Knights and a weakened Bulldogs, and then you've got Tigers and Eels. That could be really nice for him leading into the Origin period. So I really like Iro. Unfortunately, he doesn't work for my team so much, but if he does and you need a centre wing instead of the fullback roulette we've all got going on, that's a really solid option. Okay, I'm going to look at another centre wing now, just while we're on the topic. He's kind of a forgotten cheapie at the moment. There's a lot of others that started off cheaper than him. And the reason why there's not that many people trading him in or actually owning him is because, well, I mean, look at these guys. You got Toya, you got Shibasaki, you got Tamale, you got Purdue, even Arthur's to some degree. There's a lot of really well scoring cheap options that people either started with or are chasing now that they've held the spot. Tamale, especially, and Shibasaki. Shibasaki now has pushed Mariner out, which is very, very solid for its future prospects. But yeah, if you were somebody that didn't jump on a Tamale and you need a centre wing this week to free up a little bit of cash to make a trade to get a big fullback in, I don't mind Toa as an alternative to Male. He's dented his break even a little bit. I still think he's going to make a lot of money from here, but let's have a look at Toa. So he's priced at about 30. If we look at his 2024 stats, he was cheap. He was cheap because he got injured all the time. At 2023, he finished with a 49 average. And part of that was, well, not this score. Part of that was that monstrous 150 that he popped out in round 12 and then continued with as per program. But even in 22, he averaged north of 40. So I don't have no problem with Toa scoring at least 40 and probably a fair bit better in 2025 with an improved Tigers team. Now, do I think he's necessarily better than a Shibasaki or a Tamale and stuff? No. I think he's probably on a similar level, but he's just a little bit less owned and a little bit more forgotten about because a lot of people started with those others when Toa wasn't there in round 1. So consider him if you need a centre wing option. But yeah, let's get away from centre wing now. And we will talk about, well, one Jaden Campbell. Now, he probably isn't as hot property as I would have had yesterday or the day before, purely due to the fact that Keanu Keeney, the news now is that he looked like he's out for a good portion of this year with a serious neck problem. Now, Campbell scored very well last week with Keeney dominating, opening it up, turning it into a really open game where Jaden Campbell can thrive and run around and do a lot of damage. But if we actually look at Jaden Campbell's stats as well, we kind of notice that even though he scored well, he's still not doing that much running. Yeah, look at all this attack, all this try assists and try contributions and lots of goals and lots of points, but he's still not running very much at all. And we know that he can massively improve on that because, well, he was brought up through the system as a fullback and a 5'8". I don't think he's going to be as run heavy as he was in 2024 or previous when he was playing at 5'8" for fullback. But you see it a little bit with guys like him, and Luke Metcalf is probably the other one. There's a few of these guys who have run a lot more, like 5 to 10 points more worth in just the pure running part, which naturally would create more attack in itself. Because they're the one steering the team around the park and kicking the ball, I think that with Keeney gone, they're going to need his running game a bit. But on the flip side, if Keeney's not opening it up, maybe that attack drops down a little bit as well. But I'm pretty happy to say that Campbell will be up in the conversation for one of the top 5'8" this year. And, well, he has the fullback dual as well, which makes it very nice and useful for flex. And maybe that's who you can plug in for a couple of weeks. Maybe you can move him into 5'8", and then jump on, say, a Pappenhausen if his ankle doesn't hurt him too much this week. But I think that there's probably a lot more option to go for those really low break-even fullbacks at the moment. But if you need a 5'8" for some reason, or you're willing to take a flyer on Jaden Campbell, I don't think he's a bad option. Do I think he's better? Well, possibly not. And for that reason, I don't know if I can recommend him now that Keeney is gone. But I would not be surprised if he keeps pumping out like a high 70s average, or even 80 beyond. Let's get away from these attacking players now and talk about more base stat beasts. More, Scoop, you say? I've already got Haas and Terrell May and maybe like a Tino and a Horsburgh. There's so many at the moment. There's just so many. And in all honesty, if you don't have Payne Haas, you should probably try and get on him. But if you have a few and you're missing, say, like a Tino and you don't have a White or, say, Farth or anything like that, and you're in the market for a second rower, maybe you had Lucas there last week and you've still got Lucas sitting in your second row. Personally, I'd turn him to Haas, but if you've got Haas and you're in the market for a second rower, I really love Toby Ketchman. This bloke is the future of the Dragons. Him and his twin brother Ryan, poor bloke, busted his ACL early in the season. He is a base stat beast. If we look at his 2024, he was in reserve grade for 12 weeks. And if we look at those 12 weeks, he actually averaged about mid-60s in under 60 minutes. He's a workhorse and he does very, very well. Now, what did we see last year when he came in? Yeah, it's not reserve grade. He's not going to hit the top flight 50, 60 minutes from nowhere. Of course he's not. But he hit almost 50 in about 40 minutes, 1.3 ppm. And that's probably what we would expect. Maybe that comes back a little bit. But look at this year. Boom, 70 minutes, 61. Yes, there's some injury affected games going on. But I think there's every chance he can hit 55 to 60 minutes and score 60 plus from where he's priced at. And I know who I'd prefer in my team at the moment over Seyfarth, who took a try to get to 70, and Hopgood, who's still just not firing with the Eels, looking really terrible in attack. So I think Couchman is a real option to make some money and be a very consistent scorer for you in that second row position. Do I think he's ever going to score you 100? Probably not. But I think that he has a lot of value as a solidarity player there, who can make you some good money as well. Okay. Somebody else. who I'm a little bit interested in for centre wing for similar reasons to Iro, but kind of different scenario, is Paul Alamotti. Now, he had a cracking game last week. He had a few cracking games this year, actually. But that's partially off the back of tries. But the reason is that was a wing game, and that was a wing game. And previously, also when he's played wing for the Panthers, he scored well. He scored 5 tries in 5 games on the wing because wingers score more tries than centres. He's currently, 5 for 5, and he has only a 36% try scoring rate in the centres. When you have a tackle busting, powerful guy like a Paul Alamotti, you're going to get tries. You're going to get a lot of points in those evade and those create and scoring statistics. You just have to literally look at the other wing at the same club in Brian To'o to see that that's the case. Now, do I think that Paul Alamotti will average what Brian To'o did? Maybe, maybe not. But he's in the Panthers team and he's now moved to a position that gets him more ball close to the line for try scoring opportunities. I think that there's every shot that he can move up into the next echelon. Do I think he's a final team player if he stays there? I'm not quite sure if he quite breaches that marker, but at his current price, last week would have been fantastic, but at his current price, if he's going to stay wing, I really like the vibes of Paul Alamotti on the wing. Okay. We'll finish off with one more player in this first episode. Keep it nice and short. And we'll use it to circle back to our original point. Now, I was running through some of these options, going through this list, and I stumbled across Wade Egan because, well, he's been doing really well. But although he is doing really well, sometimes stats can be deceiving. Yes, he's averaging 71 to start the year. Yes, he scores really well in 80 minutes. I think, what have I written down? Yeah, he scored 49 in 80 minutes in 22, 63 in 80 in 23, and 64 in 80 whenever he played 80 in 24. That's pretty solid for his price, and it really locks up that hooker position until you upgrade to like a final team player. So what's the problem? He's got some value. He's scoring really well. Well, let's go and look at the opposition. Tom Starling. He's making more money. He's cheaper, and he's scoring better. So there's no world in which Wade Egan benefits you more than having a Tom Starling in your team. Unless Wade Egan goes absolutely on a tear now and starts pushing out 70, 75 consistently, Tom Starling is just better in every way. And trying to chase, I need a pod in my team, isn't really the mindset that you need to go for. You need to pick the best player. Sometimes they're a little bit hidden. Most of the time, everybody can see the general idea, like the Starlings, the Mamazulas, the Sandon Smiths. They're the guys who are all looking at to begin the year because they were doing very well and making a lot of money in that position. Wade Egan is doing pretty well, making a decent amount of money, but he's nowhere near the rest of those guys, especially like a Starling or a Mamazulis. So keep your eyes on the ball when you're making these decisions, because sometimes they don't work out. I don't need a Toby Couchman because I've got White and Tino and Horse and May and Haas and Hopgood. I've already got somebody sitting on the bench. It's probably too expensive to be sitting on the bench. I do not want a second one. For that reason, I would go a Gajeski to a Nicholson, which I probably will do after I've finished recording. And in my case, I needed a fullback because, well, I sold Turbo and Pong is on the buy. I don't just want to run with Iongi plus somebody. I need a second fullback, and for that reason, I picked Gutho. I picked Gutho with a very low break even, who's running the team and second receiver and a lot of stuff, and just directing everything. But yes, make sure that the setup works for your team and works for you. And if you spot somebody, something that you think is going to benefit somebody before everybody else does, That's the goal. That's the whole golden ore around pods. You owning somebody who does well when nobody else does. Look at the Podmasters League. Look who's up top. Luke, Untalented Guthos. Wow, he's up for the top 50 already. And why is that? Well, a big reason is made some good choices. But look at Tua Pilotu just sitting there. He started him from round one and has got 227 points out of that bloke instead of, say, 100, 150 from uh, an alternative centre wing at a similar price. That's 100 points difference from one player in 2 weeks and bumped him way up the ranks along with the rest of his good decision making. So if you have the opportunity to jump on somebody before everything else goes down, if you notice something or somebody before everything, if you need to stop, evaluate. Will this continue? Is the role good, or is it just a couple of fluky scores? Sometimes you take the fluky scores, especially the cheaper guys. You can make some good money off them. I'm not saying don't go buy Tuipulotu because he's going to make some money, but I don't love him coming to the Storm game. I prefer a Gutherson with a nicer role. He's not quite a pod anymore, but that's what you're looking for. You're looking for these guys who you genuinely believe are better than the alternatives. Look at them, assess if their role is good, if they're likely to continue. Is that role or that money making better than everybody else? And if they're low ownership, you could be the one reaping the rewards. But make sure you do that analysis, because if you make a wrong decision and you get a couple of 30s in your team when everybody else is scoring 70s, instead of shooting up the top like Luke, you're going to fall down real hard and you're going to be racing to kick them out of your team and just jump on the others who everybody else has already. And you're down a trade as well at that point, as well as a substantial amount of points. So thank you, everybody, for joining me today. That was just a quick one for you this first week. Let me know who you'd like me to go through next week, especially after this week's games. Make sure to follow SuperCoach Hub on the Insta, the X, and join the SuperCoach Hub Discord if you're looking for some really solid discussion from some very, very good super coaches. I think that link is in the description. Don't quote me on that, but thanks for watching, everybody, and Scoop out. We'll see you in next week's Pod Hunter.